What is the most prevalent contradiction of systems noticeable under socialism? Well, it's the contradiction between the socialist system and the nervous system. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Now, I found an interesting story about LGBTism and the academia. But in order to be able to tell that story, a history lesson is in order. So, on November 7th, 1917, several people with a dubious ideology staged a coup d'etat, or a revolution as they called it. Just one day later, and on November 8th, their revolution was complete and successful. The new government was to be led by a committee of 7 men called the Politburo. These 7 men were as follows: Lev Borisovich Kamenev, Grigory Yevseyevich Zinoviev, Grigory Yakovlovich Sokolnikov, Andrei Sergeyevich Bubnov, Lev Davidovich Bronstein, or Leon Trotsky, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, and a weird Georgian dude named Yosef Jugashvili, more commonly known as Yosef Vissarionovich Stalin. Now fast forward 20 or so years, after a Holodomor here and there, some purposeful starvation here and there, several hundreds of thousands of Lithuanians, Estonians, and other undesirables murdered and buried in common graves by the NKVD, and we reach to a period called the Great Purge. At the end of it, only one of the 7 men who actually kick-started the revolution was still alive. This guy. With the exception of Lenin, who kicked the bucket more or less naturally, one by one, each of the original members were disposed of as a threat to the progress of revolution, you know? Trotsky was killed even in exile, Kamenev and Zinoviev were shot in the head after the trial of the 16, Bubnov faced the same fate 2 years later, and Sokolnikov, while serving a 10-year sentence for the crime of wrongthing, established at the trial of the 17, surprisingly died in a prison fight just a few days after the sentence. Word goes around that the NKVD had something to do with that, but don't tell that to the socialists. They'll accuse you of wrongthing. Bubnov's family was still looking for him in the mental hospital, sometimes in the 70s, because no one had bothered to at least tell them that the once esteemed member of the Politburo and the revolutionary leader had fallen out of grace, and progress had to, take one for the team. For the sake of community cohesion, progress, and maintaining the safe space. Fast forward several decades and moving geographically to the former Western Bloc, somewhere in the late 60s and early to mid-70s. In this period, a group of people were starting something that would go on to torment the Occidental society for at least 50 years. This group of people was larger and less formal or formalized when compared to the Politburo, but nonetheless, we can recognize people like Germaine Greer, Peter Tatchell, Richard Neville, Betty Friedan, and many others as part of the same trend. These people, and many others like them, opened the floodgates for what some may call the perpetuation of degeneracy and the death of decency. Now, whether you believe that, or whether you believe that these people did nothing wrong, it is clear for all camps that these people changed the course of the society. For better or worse, God help us. Neville published pictures of naked women in 1970. Greer was writing articles such as "I Am a Whore" for an Amsterdam-based magazine, and Tatchell was a member of the initial Gay Liberation Front, the JLF, in which he ended up as he was running away from the draft. The GLF had an interesting manifesto which read something like this, quote, "If we are to succeed in transforming our society, we must persuade others of the merits of our ideas, and there is no way we can achieve this if we cannot even persuade those most affected by our oppression to join us in fighting for justice. We do not intend to ask for anything. We intend to stand firm and assert our basic rights. If this involves violence, it will not be we who initiate this, but those who attempt to stand in our way to freedom. Now this sounds lovely, isn't it? Well, in 2010, at the 40th anniversary of the GLF, Peter Tatchell was describing the GLF in The Guardian as follows, quote, "The GLF was a glorious, enthusiastic, and often chaotic mix of anarchists, hippies, left-wingers, feminists, liberals, and other counterculturalists. Despite our differences, we shared a radical idealism, a dream of what the world could and should be, free from not just homophobia, but the whole sex-shame culture. We were sexual liberationists and social revolutionaries, out to turn the world upside down. GLF's main aim was never equality with the status quo. GLF's strategy for queer emancipation was to change society's values and norms rather than adapt to them. We sought a cultural revolution to overturn centuries of male heterosexual domination and thereby free both queers and women." Now, what a lovely dude. A draft-dodging homosexual with a long career in the Labour Party with an almost 50 years of history in shamelessly promoting non-normative behavior and who was a Tumblrist way before it was cool. Surely any leftist degenerate, feminist, and social justice warrior, if you pardon my stream of pleonasms, would be absolutely thrilled to have such a treasure of individual amongst them to speak from experience and how it is to struggle for what you believe in the trenches. Because, he might have dodged the draft, but Tatchell was willing to take physical flak for his beliefs, no matter how wrong I may think they were. Peter Tatchell got a lot of beating for his political stances, most recently in Moscow, where he went there to face real homophobes right down in the streets, as opposed to most LGBTs who go cry like the pussies they are because someone misgendered them on Twitter. Yet Mr. Tatchell is now under heavy attack, and not from those angry, homophobic, right-wing, venom-spitting, women-hating, did I say angry yet? Oh, and misogynistic, anti-gay conservatives. No. He's under heavy attack by his own people, who are now firmly convinced that Mr. Thatcher is a transphobic, racist, homophobic bigot. Why? Well, because he allegedly used racist language and signed an open letter supporting the incitement of violence against transgender people. Now, is there any evidence for that? Of course not. And the letter he signed demanded nothing more than freedom of speech, including the freedom to offend the feelings of trannies or the feelings of cucks who take offense in the name of trannies. But you see, the times have changed. The revolution has progressed, and now violence means mean words and being corrected on scientific facts, and the fact that they are being corrected is also a transgression because it's heteronormative, cis-sexist language. The same way as disagreeing with Stalin on Holodomor policies ended up meaning conspiracy against the socialist order. And no matter how many appeals to revolutionary logic may Greer or Tatchell bring, like the fact that their revolution used to believe in freedom of speech for starters, it doesn't matter. The purge has already been settled. So what if Tatchell has 49 years of impeccable track record as a leftist? So what if The Guardian pleads their case? By the same token, it didn't matter when Kamenev and Zinoviev appealed to their impeccable track record of Soviet loyalism. So what if they weren't Trotskyists? So what if Yagoda and Yezhov argued their case? The purge had already been settled. And later on, Yagoda and Yezhov followed, because that's how progress was achieved. The same way, The Guardian will eventually follow down the memory hole of no platforming, because that's how revolutionary progress is achieved. You see, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Sure, the dispatching methods may differ. For instance, there aren't gulags for wrong thing, not yet anyway, though we have the intellectual gulag of political correctness, but the mentality is exactly the same, and has always been the same since the collectivist French Revolution. As a consequence, the results are always the same and have always been the same: misery, poverty, destruction, dishonesty, and totalitarianism. And just like the previous collectivist revolutions, one of the steps that happens after a while into the revolution is kicking out the old guard of the first revolutionaries. That's why, while I do think that the National Union of Students of the United Kingdom is indeed a collection of totalitarian sleazebuckets, I find it very hard to garner any sympathy for people like Peter Tatchell or Germaine Greer. Yeah, they are victims, all right, but they're the victims of the system they themselves helped create. Just like Jagoda was eventually purged by the system he served loyally for decades, Tatchell is now being purged by the establishment he helped create and then loyally served for decades. In his article on the Daily Telegraph, now it's funny that the Telegraph is ready to print him, not so much the Guardian anymore. Anyway, he says the following, quote, "I'm all in favor of protesting against real racists and transphobes, but the most effective way to do this is to expose and counter their bigoted ideas, not censor and ban them. I've often debated religious fundamentalists and homophobes. They've lost the argument, leaving them weakened and discredited." Oh, it sounds good, isn't it? It's just that it's completely untrue. When push came to shove, those that Mr. Thatcher calls religious fundamentalists and homophobes did not lose the argument. They simply had their democratic rights of representation taken away, and gay marriage was streamlined and shoved down the throats of Britons. That's what really happened. When a petition was raised to oppose gay marriage, it gathered 650,000 signatures. Petitions with much fewer signatures have been discussed in the British Parliament, but this one was ignored and sidelined by the right-thinking people. Then it was the debate on gay marriage in the House of Lords, which again was cut short by Cameron and other right-thinking people. Just when it was about to be seriously changed and revised. So you see, Mr. Tatchell, you can't now just run to the free speech-loving people to bitch and complain when you yourself completely and utterly endorse exactly the type of behavior that the establishment is now perpetuating against yourself. Now, as far as I'm concerned, things like student unions should not even exist in the first place. Or, at the very least, membership in them should be voluntary, as it is in most of Europe. Even The Guardian has been asking lately whether these unions are actually worthy of anything. For the privilege of being forcibly signed up into an organization that are highly concerned with very important things, such as whether bottled water should be banned from the union shop or not, students pay around £200. It's quite expensive to pay £200 for an organization very busy with the question on whether it should lobby the university for transsexual toilets, methinks. But hey, progress. The revolution must go on, and people like Peter Tatchell and Germaine Greer and many others are holding it back. One thing to keep in mind, just like the purging of the initial Old Guard is a predictable step, so is the collapse. This collectivist, warm and fuzzy, cultural Marxist establishment not only has to collapse, but it will collapse for sure. Because once truth goes out on the window, and it always does, it's then only a matter of time until the fall comes. That's all I have to say. Thank you for watching and supporting this channel. See you around on Freedom Alternative.